Have you wrestled with imposter syndrome, excessive and unsubstantiated self-doubt coupled with an uncanny lack of confidence? I'm your host, Betty Danowitz. Listen as I interview highly successful individuals about their experience with this imposter syndrome and how it manifests itself in their lives in this If You Ask Betty podcast series dealing with imposter syndrome. Hi, Katrina. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hi, Betty. Thanks for having me.
So, Katrina, tell us about you.
So that's a big question. I am a trainer and facilitator by profession. I have been for 27 years. I went out on my own 27 years ago and have been providing training to everyone and anyone. But my claim to fame is that I have trained almost every department in the state of California.
Oh, that's neat.
Which is where I live. Yeah.
That's really cool. That's something to be proud of. Where at in California are you?
I'm in Sacramento. So I'm in the capital, which, then makes them easy access.
Yes. And you actually get all the seasons there.
We do get all the seasons. We get some abbreviated seasons.
Yeah. Like spring is like 3.5 days.
Exactly. And we are already in summer. It's going to be like 90 degrees today. So
Yep. I have my in-laws live in San Francisco area. So and I had a boss that lived in Sacramento. You didn't need to know that, but there you go. I'm just relating. So when
what we do.
It's what we do. What would you say, and you mentioned one of these already, but what would you say are your biggest accomplishments in life and in work?
So they kind of meld together, life and work. But, for 27 years, I've kept my family afloat and fed with a business that gives back to me personally as well and feels really fulfilling. I'm about to launch my 18-year-old neurodivergent son out into the world.
Ooh.
That feels like an accomplishment. And then, you had asked me this question in an email and I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, what are my accomplishments? And, wasn't coming up with many, but then I did have one that I feel like I had to share because I'm framing this one. I had the cover article for ATD magazine last year. So that was a big one for me.
Whoa, congratulations. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is really, really cool. You should frame that. And I think it's interesting that you said, I'll basically what you just said to me was, I'll claim this one because I'm framing it.
Yeah.
Look at that. Calling you out already. We're 3 minutes in.
It will happen again, I'm sure.
That's really neat. I had, obviously this isn't about me, but I had an article in ATD magazine a couple of years back. And I still, when I think about it, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And I was not the cover. I was deep in, like 3/4 of the way in. But they were like, we're running out of stuff. Get Betty to write something. But and I was so proud of that. So you should be just over the moon. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I am. Yeah.
So if I were to ask other people, what would they say about you?
So this is a great question because I happen to be in the middle of doing a personal brand survey. Oh. So I can tell you exactly what they've said because they've said it. And the qualities they gave me are passionate, authentic, trustworthy, community-oriented, inspiring, and supportive. And then 2 of the comments that came up over and over is that I can do anything and that I'm multi-skilled.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. And, I can also tell you a couple of other things they said that go with, being able to do anything and being multi-skilled that, aren't as comfortable, that maybe I try to be too many things to too many people, and maybe I overcommit and over try to please.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that's applicable to what we're talking about today, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
So
so.
that leads us nicely into the next question, which is, what has been your experience with imposter syndrome?
Well, I've done a really good lifetime job of avoiding it. And I've done that by staying in my lane. So I'm really good at what I do. And I'm really good at doing what I do for the people I do it for.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I've hit a few points in my life where I've realized, like, well, what I'm doing, I want more than what I'm doing. I want to try something different. And it's that moment when I decide to change lanes that it really raises its head. And you know, I think I'm kind of at a crossroads with my age and my life and situation, and so I, you know, decided that there were these things I wanted, and then, you know, and then I'm like, but why? But why? Like, just go back to your lane. It's so nice and happy there, and everybody knows you, and there's no risk. And so it's that risk avoidance, I think, that really raises its head.
So it sounds like when you experience imposter syndrome is when you make a change, or are you thinking about making a change?
Right.
And that is
Right.
terrifying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't wait to unpack that. I'm excited about that. Okay. Can you tell us about maybe like one of your most recent experiences or episodes of imposter syndrome?
Okay, well, let's just go back like 3 weeks, maybe
Okay.
4.
Sure. Fair.
Yeah, so so let's go back a year and then we'll go back 3 weeks. So I have wanted to write a book since I was a kid. Like that's just like, that is the thing. Like, I've always wanted to do. I've written 3. Nobody's ever seen them. Well, that's not true, actually. The third one I finally shared. And so just in deciding that I wanted to write a book, I knew that I only was going to feel like it was worthwhile if I did it traditionally, and didn't want to put it out there, didn't want to take that risk. So, you know, they sit on the shelf. And then I finally faced it, and through a series of soul searching, and yeah, I contacted someone who could help me, which was a whole thing in itself because I tend to not ask for help, and they wanted to see it, and so they read it and they looked at it, and then they said, well, this doesn't really work. And I'm like, oh, well, great.
Oh.
Yeah, but out of that conversation, another book has evolved, and so now I am actually under contract to write a book.
Wow.
Yeah, which is totally exciting and everything I've wanted, but at the same time terrifying. So I sit with it often, and I'm like, who am I? Why am I? What do I have to say? You know, all those things, even though, you know, 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, I said to you, like, I'm really good at what I do. I really am good. So, you know, that I got the hurdle of, you know, over the hurdle of getting out of my lane, but then, you know, immediately, like, the brakes come on. And then 4 weeks ago, this is all kind of a package deal because, you know, in order to have a book published, people need to know who you are. You need to increase your platform. So I've been, you know, actively trying to speak at more conferences, actively putting myself out there. And I found myself in Florida at the Learning Guilds conference, going to speak about connection, which is something I passionately believe in. But, you know, I'm surrounded by AI, and AI this and AI that. And like, every session is not about human connection. It's not about this very, you know, emotional thing. And I just kept wandering around going like, why do they even have me here? And I said that to people even like, why am I even here? And which would often lead to me like, kind of going into my shell and like, I just won't talk to people. I'm just going to hang out by myself, because not feeling that sense of belonging, which is like hallmark imposter syndrome, not feeling that sense of belonging because of my topic, and not knowing people as well, was very awkward and uncomfortable. And, so my initial reaction is like, well, let's never do this again. Like, I never want to go to a conference again. I never want to speak again. Like, don't want to, it would be easier back in my lane.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
It was good. It was really good. I was trying really hard not to say anything, because I tend to be like the church lady when I'm really enjoying something. So I'm like, yeah, oh yeah. And then I don't want to take away from your story because it was so good.
I couldn't even look at you. I just realized like that whole time, like I never saw you or what you were doing.
You were very focused on keeping the emotions at bay.
Yeah.
So when you're having an episode of imposter syndrome, and you've sort of told us a little bit about this, but I want to dig a little deeper. How does it manifest itself? So this is what I mean. So like for some people, it's perfectionism, overachieving, self-sabotage. What do you experience? Like what happens?
Well, I think there's probably starts with a lot of self-doubt, a lot of, questioning my worth, a lot of talking myself out of a situation. And I think that's coupled with some perfectionism as well. Like I've got to, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it perfect. So I'm going to stay up forever, making sure that, every single thing on this PowerPoint is exceptional and, over giving so that I can feel a better sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned in some of the stories you've told sort of almost like a shrinking back, like the who am I feeling. Like I always imagine and I've said this on so many episodes now, people are like, we know what you're going to say, Betty. It's like it's the meme of Homer Simpson just slurking back into the bushes, right?
Right.
That you've all used. Like it's that feeling of, ooh, don't look at me.
Right. Right. Which is really counter to kind of who I am, to like, if we're going to dig really deep, I am the middle child of 5 children. So I am the like, look at me kid, like pay attention to me. Like, Mom, you left me at the library again. Come get me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then, coupled with like, oh, but don't look at me now because you may see that I am not as competent as you believe, and I don't have all the answers.
Do you ever have those thoughts? Do you ever think those actual words?
Okay. Yeah.
Has anyone ever said that to you? Other than your brothers and sisters, they don't count.
No, they don't count for many
reasons.
They don't
count. Yeah.
No.
Okay. No, so it's just coming. That voice is just coming from you.
Oh yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
That voice is very loud.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any like physical reactions when you're having this, or anything else that you notice mentally, physically, spiritually, anything psychologically?
That's an interesting question. I think lately, because I feel like I've been feeling this more lately as I put myself out in the world in a different way. Sometimes it feels like nausea. And I feel like that's the thing I've been saying a lot lately. Like I could just throw up.
Mm-hmm.
And, thinking about that, like what I do, whether I'm training a group of 10 or a group of, whatever, speaking to a large group, If they've invited me in, if I feel comfortable with the topic, I'm good. I don't have much of a stress response. So, but when I'm feeling imposter syndrome, like I feel the stress response, and I think I'm not familiar with it. Like it's not normal for me to be in it. So yeah. So nausea definitely is the biggie.
And it's a different kind of nausea. It's not like I ate something, it doesn't agree with me nausea. It's not like I think I'm actually getting something, feeling sick. It's like a back of your throat lump. Like you feel like you're like mentally you feel like you could throw up, but you don't have any real true physical symptoms.
Right. It's a very visceral, like all over body feeling.
Yeah. Like, well, that's the noise I make. So I'm like, it's that whole, what about Bob? If I fake it, I don't have it. Right. So if I just go, whoa, like, does that, it's pretty gross, but it works.
Right.
So, okay. So when you think about how the way that it manifests itself in your life, we talked about, a little bit of perfectionism, maybe some overachieving, definitely some masking and some pulling back, right? Are there other contributing factors? So like in previous episodes, we've talked about triggers, which like you've mentioned a lot of them, feeling different, feeling like you don't belong, being isolated is often a big trigger for people, trying something new or having a new level of expectations, whether you set them or someone else did. So those are all sort of triggers, but are there other contributing factors? And you mentioned, I'm so excited that you mentioned that you're the middle child, because I've brought that up with a few folks this time as far as birth order goes. And most of the time they haven't thought about it. You know why they haven't thought about it? Because they're the firstborn.
Oh, right.
That's why they haven't thought about it.
Non-issue.
It's a non-issue. They're obviously the golden child. They're, like they're the Ross and Ross and Monica. They're like, I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it doesn't really matter to them. But the middle child is like, hello, y'all forgot me. Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that up. But are there other things that you think contribute to this?
Okay. Well, I'm going to lay one out. And I think that I'm lucky that I'm my age, but unlucky that I still have to deal with this. I think social media is, if I was 15, it would kill me,
Wow. I felt that. Yep.
Yeah. Thankfully, I'm not 15.
So glad I'm not 15 either. That's terrible.
God.
That'd be terrible.
It's this funny, like, I have a very logical look at it, and I can look at it and go, I know that person who is saying the things that they're saying and in the way that they're saying it, they may still be living in their mom's basement, which is fine if you need to live in your mom's basement. I hold no judgment. I invite my son back to my basement. I'll even let him live upstairs.
That's very nice of you.
But there is just this feeling of just not having the presence, not having the following, not having the, all of that. Like, logically, I know, like, that's not all real. But then, especially at this point where I'm, being encouraged to, like, post on LinkedIn more, like, have more presence, it can be really defeating. And especially, I think learning and development is at a weird place. Learning and development is this weird redefining itself. And, if I spend too much time reading and seeing what people are saying, like, everything I've been doing is, like, has not been valuable. We've been doing it all wrong. Like blah, blah, blah. You know, we all know that. Even though I'm still doing the things that people say are outdated and in the past. And I'm still working with people who have no idea how people learn. And, it's, it's, it's hard on your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm in agreement with you. That's, the comparison that happens. I'm going to use the word naturally. I'm going to go ahead and use that word. It naturally happens. We see, other people's highlight reels. We see other people's, I'm just going to say this too, lies, because some people are not just bending or inflating the truth, but they're just downright lying. That's not what they're talking about is not a thing. It didn't happen. Like,
right.
And then when you experience the negative parts where people are kind of nasty and you're like, what are you doing? Like,
right.
There's, and it's not an authenticity thing, or is it? Like, maybe that is who they are.
Right.
And that's also like, what are you doing? I don't want to, you're not a leader that I would want to follow if that's who you are. I'm not trying, I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to like talk in circles or like being vague. I don't have anybody in particular to call out, but I see it. I see like the anger that comes out and I'm like, guys, what do we, I don't know. I am not a fan of, shit talking people or things on social media. I don't care how invincible you feel. People what does Maya Angelou say? People will remember, they won't remember what you say or what you do, but they'll remember how you make them feel.
Right.
And that includes some flippant comment that you put on the internet. And here's the thing. We read that stuff through our own emotions, which is all the more reason for you to be careful of what you say or speak or write or type, because you don't know who's reading that. And it's a terrible reflection on you. It's not a great reflection on our industry. And we have to take some level of responsibility as those who post. Just equally, we have to take responsibility those who read. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now. But I felt what you said deeply, because it brings me down. It makes me sad to see what I see a lot of times out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can take me, and I'm not proud of this, but it can take me from a really good, productive, positive mood in the morning, and then I spend a little time there, and then I'm done. Like, end up spiraling, questioning everything, even though logically I know so much of it is false or inauthentic or just not never aimed at me and not even meant for me, but it still resonates.
It definitely causes you to set boundaries. It's really bad that we have to set boundaries against reading other people's work-related posts.
Right.
That's not a good sign.
No.
Anything else that you think is a contributing factor?
I think you mentioned this, and I think for me, it is the really large one, is just that sense of belonging, that need to belong. And, we go back to the middle child thing, because I like to know where things come from, right? Like, if I'm going to have to carry this, like, where is it from? But that if I feel safe and I feel like I belong in a group, in a situation, in an event, in a moment, whatever it is, imposter syndrome doesn't come up, because I know I'm safe. And I think it's that safety, that sense of belonging, that really, really does it for me.
It's interesting
in a positive way.
It's interesting you use the word safe. Talk more about that.
Hmm. That's so. I don't even know. I don't even know what to talk more about that. Like,
So let me pose a question. Maybe that'll help. So
yeah.
when you're with a group of people that you feel like you belong, and the way you know that you feel like you belong is you never even think anything about belonging. You're just there and you're in the moment and you're with them. And it never occurs to you to even consider in any way that you shouldn't be there. Like never even occurs to you, because the feeling is
Yeah.
that you not only, because what is it they say that like, it's not about being invited to the table. It's not about being, what is it? Invited to the table, asked your opinion, or if you're actually just a regular part of the conversation. That's where belonging happens, right? I totally messed that up, but some of you listening are like, we know, Betty, we know what you mean. Okay. So you're in that space. What would have to change for you to not feel that way? So that's the thing that thing that changes, that's the thing that makes you feel unsafe.
I know exactly what it is, because I feel like this has happened so many times. Um, and again, this is one of those, like, logically, I understand why it happens, but it doesn't change the emotional piece. I need people to ask me about me.
Hmm.
And until that happens in a genuine way, I can't feel safe. And I feel like, as I've been putting myself in a lot of situations with new people, and oftentimes that is what's lacking. Just that moment of somebody saying, like,
Yeah.
what brought you here? Like, a dumb question doesn't have to be anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just give me a little attention.
Sure.
Just give me a little attention.
And I want to take this moment to say there's nothing wrong with that. There's something very middle child about it, but we both know that. We both understand. But there's nothing wrong with that, because part of belonging is feeling like what you have to say or what you have to bring is going to have value.
Right.
And if no one ever asks you what you're bringing, and no one ever invites you into the conversation and asks you to put your meaning, I'm going to use crucial conversations here, put your meaning into the pool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then,
Right.
then you don't, then you just feel like it's more like listening to a podcast, because
Right.
it's like eavesdropping on a conversation. You might have something to say, but unless somebody says to you, hey, what do you think? A lot of times it's natural for us to not want to put our meaning into the pool.
Right.
Do you think that, I mean, we're really honing in on the middle child thing, but do you think that growing up, you brought it up, I just want to say, because I get all excited because there are so many correlations we could do with that.
Well,
Do you
and
think
it's
that
real. Like,
it's a very real thing? If you guys are like, what the heck is she talking about middle child? Read the birth order book. That's where I would start. It's called The Birth Order Book. And then you could also, like, there's like lots of other derivatives, but they all kind of say the same thing. But do you feel like outside of your family, middle child, did you struggle with belonging growing up, or even in college? Did you have moments?
oh, Betty, do we have enough time?
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. So, I was a nerdy kid. I lived in the same town my entire life. I graduated with kids that I went to preschool with. Like, you were who you were until you left.
Yeah.
And if I go back, I'm still that same person that they decided I was at 5 years old.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And then in college, I hope my mom doesn't listen to this. In college, it was a redefining myself. So I, could make some very poor choices about how I was going to be and who I was going to be, and
Yeah.
to get out of that other feeling, which then leads to a whole other group of feelings to deal with. But
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. At least college was fun.
Yeah. I'm glad you had a good time and lived to tell the tale. That's what's
exactly.
Important. I think the thing to take away from this, I'm hoping us folks are listening, is that that question of, hey, how are you? What brings you here today? Sometimes we feel like it's stale, but it may be it's literally opening the door for somebody. And
absolutely,
those of us who are, high level 97% extroverts, I'm raising my hand just for those listening. It's easy for us because it tends to be a natural thing that we ask that question. I think maybe I'm generalizing, but I'm going to do it anyways. Like, I think extroverts tend to do that. Because we need someone to suck the life out of. So if I can hear from you what brought you here, that gives me more fodder to continue to suck the life right out of you. And then you will go home with your social battery dead and I'll feel great. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. And I'm like, let's just add another layer to this. I'm very extroverted.
You're like that. I think you're ambivert. You're an ambivert.
Yeah, I am. I think you're onto that.
Like 60-40, so, like 65-35, something like that.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there. I think I want to spend more time on the extrovert, but I need that invitation to cross the line.
Yeah. Really interesting. I wonder how many people are listening and going, oh my God, that's me.
I hope so, because otherwise it's going to be very lonely.
If people start coming up to you at conferences and being like, hey, what brings you here? You'll be like, oh, I know what you did. You listened to Betty.
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
You're okay. Yeah. As long as they're asking you, who cares how you get there?
Exactly.
Okay, Katrina, I got one more question for you.
Sure.
Why did you want to be part of this Imposter Syndrome project?
I am actively working on outing my imposter. I'm
get him.
I'm over this. I'm over it. I want to not feel this way. And what I have learned is working is to just let people know, is just to put it out there. That and I also wanted the opportunity to connect with you because I think you're an awesome human.
Oh, well, thanks.
So there you go.
Yeah.
And now we have something to talk about, right? Like when we run into each other at the next conference, I'm like, middle child.
Always. Yeah, middle child. I'm an only, but that shouldn't surprise you or anyone.
No.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm okay with only children.
Well,
I like them.
I am so, of course you do. You're a middle child. People need to read the birth order book. I'm telling you, middle children love onlys, middle children love firstborns. And that's because they're most compatible because middle children, they want to have something to say. They want someone to ask them, but they also need somebody else to lead the way. I know how this works.
Yep.
Anyways.
Yep. I'm married to a firstborn and I have an only.
Yep. And you are very comfortable right there in the wake of them both. Yes, I know.
Yep,
I get it. Well, if nothing else, we've perked people's interest on birth order. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm really grateful that you shared your story. Thank you. Thank you so much, Katrina Kennedy, seriously, for sharing your experience with us. And thanks to the listeners. I hope that you're going to continue with this series and you're going to hear more stories about dealing with imposter syndrome. There are so many amazing people that deal with this every single day, and sharing their story helps them and you feel less alone, just like Katrina just said. So be sure to follow If You Ask Betty on LinkedIn and YouTube for more episodes and resources, and tell your friends about it. Hit that share button so that they too know that they are not alone. Peace out.